Sphere wasn't just another forgotten sci-fi thriller from the late 90s. It was a disaster that started filming without a script. The studio paid $6 million just for the rights, then panicked when test screenings went catastrophic. The polished alien sphere reflected the entire camera crew in every shot. The climactic giant squid battle, completely cut from the film.
There's just nothing better than when you make something and it means something to people.
No doubt, and one scene traumatized an entire generation of kids who weren't prepared for what they saw. Today, we're exposing 16 hidden truths behind Sphere, including why Warner Bros. Dumped it in the February death slot against Titanic and how Samuel L. Jackson fought for the strangest wig in sci-fi history. Let's get into it. 1. They started shooting without a script. This is not an exaggeration. They literally began filming without a finished screenplay. Director Barry Levinson faced an impossible situation. Warner Brothers had locked in a release date before anyone had written the script. The studio was so desperate to capitalize on the Michael Crichton brand that they ordered production to begin immediately. So, Levinson started filming with only partial pages, making up the story as they went. Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, and Samuel L. Jackson would sit in their wetsuits for hours in the cold underwater habitat set while writers frantically typed new scenes in another room. The cast often had no idea what their characters would do next. The finale wasn't even decided until they were halfway through principal photography. They were building the plane while flying it. It showed. 2. Warner Brothers paid $6 million just for the rights. After Jurassic Park became the highest-grossing film of all time in 1993, studios entered a feeding frenzy for anything with Michael Crichton's name attached. It didn't matter if the project was good. It didn't matter if it was even fully developed. Warner Brothers won a vicious bidding war by paying $6 million just for the film rights to Sphere. Not for production, not for talent, just for the rights to make it, before a single word of screenplay had been written. For context, that was more than many entire movies cost to produce in 1996. The studio was so convinced Crichton's name alone would print money that they greenlit the project without a director, without a cast, and without any plan for how to actually adapt the novel. Confidence is one thing. This was delusion. 3. The ending was reshot after disastrous test screenings. When Warner Bros. Showed the original cut to test audiences, the response was catastrophic. People were bored, confused, angry. The studio panicked and allocated emergency funds to reshoot major portions of the film. That scene where the mysterious spacecraft suddenly blasts off into space? That wasn't in the original version at all. It was added in reshoots, a desperate attempt to inject some action and spectacle into a movie that was mostly people standing in rooms talking about fears and manifestations. The new ending didn't fix the fundamental problems, but it at least gave audiences one visual moment that felt like something was actually happening on screen. Band-aids on a sinking ship. 4. The sphere reflected everything. The alien sphere at the center of the film was built as a massive physical prop, polished to an absolutely perfect mirror finish. It looked stunning on set. It also created a technical nightmare that nearly destroyed the production schedule. Because the sphere was a flawless mirror, it reflected everything. The camera operators, the boom microphones, the lighting rigs, director Barry Levinson, every single crew member. This was 1997, before advanced CGI could easily erase reflections. The solution was absurd. They draped the entire camera crew in black velvet fabric and made them hide in shadows between takes. Even with these precautions, post-production teams spent months digitally painting the crew out of the sphere's reflection frame by frame. A beautiful prop that became a production nightmare. Sometimes the coolest idea is the worst idea. 5. The jellyfish attack. Used thousands of rubber props. For the scene where Queen Latifah's character gets attacked by a swarm of jellyfish that shouldn't exist inside a sealed underwater habitat, The production used thousands of rubber jellyfish prosthetics floating in a giant water tank. To make them move organically, they aimed powerful underwater fans at the tank to create currents. The actors had to swim through this soup of artificial tentacles while the fans blasted water at them. The rubber jellyfish constantly tangled around the actors' breathing regulators, got caught in their hair, and wrapped around their wetsuits. It was genuinely dangerous. The scene took days to shoot because they kept having to stop and untangle actors who couldn't breathe. And wait until you hear what happened to Queen Latifah in that scene. It's coming. 6. The giant squid was completely cut. In Michael Crichton's novel, the terrifying climax involves a massive battle with a giant squid that Harry's subconscious has manifested from his fears. It's the big monster showdown the entire story builds toward. The movie completely eliminated it. Budget constraints and scheduling conflicts meant the production couldn't afford to create a convincing giant squid effect. A TV miniseries called The Beast, featuring a giant squid, was in production around the same time, which complicated things further. Audiences who'd read the book sat waiting for the creature to appear. Instead, they got a brief blip on a radar screen, maybe 1 second of something that might be a tentacle. The boss fight never happened. The climax the entire novel builds toward just wasn't there. 7. Samuel L. Jackson's character lost his complexity. In Crichton's novel, Harry Adams is a black mathematician whose race is significant to his character. He faces subtle racism and professional bias from the rest of the team, which fuels his cynicism, his isolation, and his increasingly paranoid behavior. These weren't minor details. They were central to understanding why Harry responds to the sphere the way he does. The film cast Samuel L. Jackson, perfect casting, then stripped out almost all the racial subtext from the screenplay. Critics pointed out that this gutted the character's motivations. It turned him from a complex, psychologically rich figure dealing with real professional obstacles into just a generically angry guy who reads books and goes crazy. The depth was in the novel. The movie left it there. 8. Everyone called it an Abyss ripoff. When Sphere hit theaters in February 1998, reviews immediately accused it of being a shameless knockoff of James Cameron's The Abyss from 1989. The comparisons were everywhere. Underwater setting, mysterious alien intelligence, crew going insane, tensions rising in a claustrophobic habitat. The criticism infuriated everyone involved because it was factually backwards. Michael Crichton wrote and published Sphere in 1987, 2 full years before The Abyss was released. If anyone was borrowing ideas, it would have been Cameron taking inspiration from Crichton's book. The filmmakers tried to defend themselves with this chronology, but the damage was done. In the public's mind, Sphere was the ripoff regardless of which actually came first. Timing matters. Perception is everything. 9. Samuel L. Jackson demanded the weird wig. Samuel L. Jackson had a very specific vision for how Harry Adams should look, and he fought for it. He insisted on wearing a strange, balding wig with long, stringy hair on the sides and back, combined with thick glasses that made him look bookish and socially awkward. Jackson was already being typecast as the cool, badass action hero after Pulp Fiction. He wanted Harry to be the opposite. Uncool, physically unimpressive, intellectual, and deliberately unsexy. The production thought the look was too strange. Jackson refused to budge. He got his weird wig. It became one of the most memorable visual elements of his performance. Sometimes actors know their characters better than the studio does. 10. The underwater set made everyone miserable. The production built the underwater habitat inside massive hangars at the Mare Island Naval Shipyard in Vallejo, California. These were enormous, windowless metal buildings that had previously housed nuclear submarines. The cast spent months trapped inside these cold, damp, echo-filled spaces with no natural light. The sets were constantly wet from water effects. The metal walls were freezing. 12-hour days inside a cold metal box while wearing wetsuits and not knowing what the script was going to say next. Dustin Hoffman reportedly hated every minute of the production. He later called it one of the most miserable experiences of his career. When your lead actor describes the shoot as miserable, the misery shows on screen. 11. The book Harry reads foreshadows everything. Harry Adams spends much of the film reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. In the movie, it looks like just a prop to show he's intellectual and literary. In Crichton's novel, it's deliberate foreshadowing. The sphere manifests your subconscious fears and thoughts into reality. Harry has been reading about the giant squid attack from Verne's novel. His mind is full of images of a terrifying sea monster. That's why the giant squid appears and attacks the habitat in the book. The movie kept the prop book but cut the squid, which made the detail completely pointless and left audiences confused about why the camera kept showing him reading. They kept the setup. They cut the payoff. That's not adaptation. That's sabotage. 12. Warner Brothers dumped it. In the February death slot, by late 1997, Warner Bros. Executives knew they had a problem. Test screenings were terrible. Reshoots hadn't fixed the fundamental issues. The movie was expensive, confusing, and boring. Instead of releasing it as a summer blockbuster the way they'd originally planned, they quietly moved it to February 1998. In Hollywood, February is the dump month, where studios bury movies they have no faith in. Sphere opened on February 13th, directly against Titanic, which was still the #1 film in America after 10 weeks in theaters. The competition wasn't even fair. Sphere was immediately crushed and disappeared from theaters within weeks. When a studio moves your expensive sci-fi thriller to February, they've already given up on it. 13. The score was better than the movie. The original plan was to give Sphere an electronic, synthesizer-heavy score that would emphasize the sci-fi elements and alien mystery. Then director Barry Levinson saw the rough cut. The film had no tension, no momentum. He brought in composer Elliot Goldenthal and asked him to write a frantic, brass-heavy orchestral score that would create excitement and suspense that didn't actually exist in the footage. Goldenthal delivered a genuinely excellent score full of energy and dread. Critics and audiences have spent decades pointing out that the music is far better than the movie it's attached to. The score does all the emotional work the script and performances failed to accomplish. When your composer has to save your film needed saving. 14. The sphere changed color to avoid looking stolen. In Michael Crichton's novel, the mysterious sphere is explicitly described as chrome or silver, a perfectly reflective metallic surface. The movie changed it to gold. One reason: the Abyss had featured silver alien technology as a central visual element. Even though Sphere the novel came first, Sphere the movie came second. The filmmakers were so paranoid about looking like they were copying the Abyss that they changed the Sphere's color in post-production. All the marketing materials and posters show a golden sphere. It's a completely superficial change made purely out of defensiveness. They permanently altered the visual identity of Crichton's creation because they were afraid of unfair comparisons. The comparisons happened anyway. 15. The characters never try to manifest anything good. Here's the obvious question the movie never addresses. The sphere's power is that it manifests your thoughts and fears into physical reality. If you think about something hard enough, it appears. The characters keep accidentally manifesting dangers and monsters. Why don't they just manifest something helpful? In Crichton's book, the characters actually discuss this. They talk about trying to manifest food, or rescue ships, or weapons. The novel explains that subconscious fear is more powerful than conscious positive thinking. So bad manifestations override attempts at good ones. The movie cuts all this dialogue and logic, which makes the characters look incompetent for never even trying. 16. Queen Latifah's death traumatized a generation. Remember when I said the jellyfish scene was coming back? Sphere is rated PG-13, marketed as a psychological thriller suitable for teenagers. But one scene crossed a line that still disturbs people who saw it as kids. Queen Latifah's character gets attacked by the manifested jellyfish swarm inside the habitat. The makeup effects showing her bloated, stung, and paralyzed face were shockingly realistic and grotesque for the rating. Her eyes are open. but she can't move or speak as she slowly suffocates. The close-ups of her swollen, poisoned face are genuinely horrifying. The scene was so intense that many television broadcasts cut or trim the worst shots when airing the film. It's the one moment where the movie's effects budget created something that actually worked. And it was too disturbing for the audience it was aimed at. Sphere proved that you can't just throw money and star power at a project and expect it to work. Which behind-the-scenes disaster shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the 90s most expensive failures, hit subscribe for more stories about the movies Hollywood wants you to forget. See you in the next one.